The fork slipped from my hand and clattered against the china plate, the sound cutting through the dining room like a gunshot. Everyone froze. Victor's eyes locked onto mine, his mouth still twisted in that cold, satisfied smile, as if he'd just announced the weather instead of throwing me away like yesterday's garbage. "This is your last dinner with us, Margaret," he said again, slower this time, making sure each word landed. "We've already contacted Shady Pines Nursing Home. They're expecting you Monday morning." I couldn't breathe. The candles Clara had lit flickered between us, casting shadows that made Victor's face look even more cruel than usual. My daughter sat beside him, staring down at her plate like she was trying to disappear into it. Not a word. Not a single word in my defense. 20 years I'd known this man. 20 years of biting my tongue when he made his little jokes about my age, my memory, my usefulness. 20 years of watching him slowly poison my relationship with my own daughter. And now this. The roast chicken I'd complimented just minutes ago sat heavy in my stomach. Sophia and Daniel, my grandchildren, didn't even look up from their phones. 16 and 14 years old, and they couldn't care less that their grandmother was being shipped off like an unwanted piece of furniture. "We think it's what's best," Victor continued, cutting into his meat with mechanical precision. "You're getting older. The house is too much for you. And frankly, Clara and I need to start thinking about our own future. Your pension and that house could really help us get ahead." There it was. The truth, naked and ugly, right there on the dinner table between the mashed potatoes and green beans. My hands trembled in my lap, but I kept them hidden under the tablecloth. I'd learned a long time ago not to let people like Victor see when they'd drawn blood. Arthur taught me that. My sweet, careful Arthur, who'd been gone 10 years now but whose voice still whispered in my ear during moments like these. "Be ready, Maggie," he told me once, during one of Victor's early visits after we'd announced Clara's engagement. "That man's got the eyes of someone who counts other people's money. We need to be smart." And we had been smart. So very, very smart. But Victor didn't know that. He thought I was just a lonely old widow with a house and a bank account, ripe for the taking. He thought my silence over the years meant weakness. He thought tonight's announcement would break me. I folded my napkin carefully, exactly the way my mother had taught me 70 years ago. Corners precise. Edges aligned. I placed it beside my plate and pushed my chair back, the legs scraping against the hardwood floor. "Margaret." Clara's voice was small, uncertain. Finally she looked at me, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Guilt? Regret? Or just fear that I might cause a scene? I didn't answer her. Didn't answer any of them. I simply stood, smoothed down my cardigan, and walked toward the door. Each step felt like I was walking through water, but I kept my spine straight, my head high. "Where are you going?" Victor called after me, irritation creeping into his voice. He didn't like when things didn't go according to his script. "We're not finished discussing this." I paused at the doorway, my hand on the frame. For just a moment, I considered turning around. Considered telling him exactly what I thought of him, of his greed, of the way he'd turned my daughter into a ghost of herself. Considered explaining that the house he was already counting on, the money he'd practically spent in his mind, none of it was his to take. But I didn't. Quiet justice, I reminded myself. Quiet justice is always more powerful than loud revenge. So I walked out into the November cold, got into my car, and drove home to the house Victor would never ever own. They thought they'd won. They thought I was defeated, broken, ready to shuffle off to some sterile room with flickering fluorescent lights and the smell of disinfectant. They thought I had no choice, no power, no way to fight back. They had no idea I'd been preparing for this exact moment for years. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't rage or throw things or collapse into despair the way Victor probably imagined. Instead, I made myself a cup of chamomile tea, sat in Arthur's old chair by the window, and watched the stars come out one by one. The house was quiet around me, but it wasn't empty. Every room held memories: Arthur fixing the banister, Clara learning to walk across this very floor, Sunday dinners when our home was full of laughter instead of calculation. This house had been our fortress, our haven, the physical representation of everything we'd built together. And Victor thought he could just take it. I sipped my tea and felt something cold and certain settle in my chest. Not anger, exactly. Something calmer than that. Something that had been building for years, since the first time Victor asked about Arthur's pension. Since the first time he made that joke about inheriting early. Since the first time I saw my daughter's light dim under his control. Tomorrow, things would start to change. Tomorrow, Victor would begin to understand exactly who he'd been underestimating all these years. Tomorrow, the first domino would fall. But tonight, I sat in my house, and I smiled. If you were sitting at that dinner table, would you have stayed silent like I did, or would you have spoken up right then and there? Tell me in the comments what you would have done, because what happens next will shock you. And don't forget to subscribe. You'll want to see how Victor's smug smile disappears when he learns the truth about what my Arthur and I prepared for people exactly like him. The morning Arthur died, he squeezed my hand 3 times. Our secret code. Always had been, since our first date at the county fair in 1971. 3 squeezes meant, I love you. I squeezed back 4 times, I love you too. He was gone 20 minutes later. I sat beside his hospital bed for an hour after, holding his hand, feeling it grow cold. The nurses were kind enough to leave me alone. They understood that some goodbyes can't be rushed, that 10 years of marriage, no 52 years, doesn't end just because the heart stops beating. When I finally stood to leave, my legs barely held me. The world outside that room felt wrong, like someone had repainted it in colors that didn't quite match. Too bright. Too loud. Too empty. The house was worse. I opened the front door to silence so thick it pressed against my chest. No whistling from the garage where Arthur always tinkered with broken clocks and old radios. No smell of his morning coffee, too strong and too sweet, just the way he liked it. No reading glasses left on the arm of his chair, waiting for him to remember where he'd put them. Just silence. And me. For weeks, I moved through the rooms like a ghost myself. I'd make 2 cups of coffee, then remember. I'd set the table for 2, then remember. I'd start to call out Arthur, dinner's ready, then remember. Clara came by during those first dark days. She held me while I cried, made sure I ate, helped me sort through Arthur's things. She was my daughter then, fully mine, the little girl who used to crawl into my lap during thunderstorms and the woman who understood that grief isn't something you get over, it's something you learn to carry. But grief does strange things to families. It either pulls you closer or shows you who people really are when there's no one left to impress. Victor started coming with her to every visit. At first, I thought it was sweet, supportive. He'd ask about the funeral arrangements, the will, the insurance. Practical questions, I told myself. Someone needs to think about these things. Then the questions got more specific. More frequent. More pointed. So the house is paid off, right? Victor asked one afternoon, barely 3 months after Arthur's funeral. We were sitting in the living room, Clara making tea in the kitchen. That's a lot of equity just sitting here. Have you thought about downsizing? I looked at him over my reading glasses. I've thought about a lot of things, Victor. I'm just saying, a house this size for one person? Seems like a waste. Clara and I could help you find something more manageable. Maybe a nice condo. What he meant was, this house should be ours. I smiled politely and changed the subject. But I noticed. I always noticed. The visits became less about checking on me and more about checking on my assets. Victor would walk through the rooms like he was already measuring for new furniture. He'd ask about Arthur's pension, my social security, the savings account Arthur had mentioned once at a Christmas dinner 5 years ago. Clara started to change too, but in a different way. She got quieter. Smaller. She'd start to speak, and Victor would talk over her. She'd suggest something, and Victor would dismiss it. She'd look at me with these sad, tired eyes that said, I'm sorry, without words. My grandchildren, Sophia and Daniel, were 12 and 10 when Arthur died. They used to beg to spend weekends at our house. Arthur would take Daniel fishing, teach him how to tie proper knots and identify birds by their calls. Sophia would help me in the garden, her small hands carefully pressing marigold seeds into the soil. After Arthur died, their visits dropped off. First to once a month, then every few months, then only on major holidays. When they did come, their faces were buried in phones and tablets. They'd grunt one-word answers to my questions, barely touch the cookies I'd baked special for them. They're teenagers now, Clara explained apologetically. You know how kids are these days. But I knew it wasn't about being teenagers. It was about what they were learning at home, about what Victor was teaching them. That old people were burdens. That grandmothers were obligations. That love had a price tag. I started eating Sunday dinners alone. I'd still cook a full meal, pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans, fresh rolls. I'd set the table with the good china, light candles, pour myself a glass of wine. And I'd sit there, one place setting at a table meant for 8, pretending I wasn't drowning in loneliness. But even then, even in my darkest moments, I never forgot what Arthur had whispered to me during one of our last conversations, when the cancer had him but his mind was still sharp. Victor's going to test you, Maggie. After I'm gone, he's going to push and push until he thinks he's broken you. Don't let him see the steel inside. Not yet. Let him think he's winning. Why? I'd asked, tears streaming down my face. Because quiet victories are always sweeter. And because I've made sure you'll have the last word, my love. Trust me. So I waited. I watched. I kept my mouth shut when Victor made jokes about my memory, my age, my outdated ways. I smiled when he asked intrusive questions about my finances. I pretended not to notice when Clara stopped calling just to talk. But after Arthur's death, something inside Clara, and especially Victor, changed. And I was ready for every single move they'd make. The first time Victor showed me who he really was, we were at a family barbecue. It was July, hot enough to melt asphalt, and everyone was gathered in Clara and Victor's backyard. This was maybe 2 years after Arthur passed. Sophia was 14 then, wearing a pretty yellow sundress that made her look older than she was. She was carrying a plate stacked with hamburgers and potato salad, navigating through the crowd of relatives and Victor's loud work friends. Her foot caught on the edge of the patio stone. The plate went flying. Food scattered across the deck, ketchup splattering on someone's white pants, potato salad sliding under the grill. The whole party went silent. Sophia's face crumpled immediately. She was about to cry, you could see it building behind her eyes. She was a sensitive child, always had been. Arthur used to say she felt things deeper than most people, that it was a gift even though it hurt sometimes. I was already moving toward her, ready to tell her it was okay, accidents happen, we'd clean it up together. But Victor got there first. You're useless, he said, his voice cutting across the yard like a whip. Just like your grandmother. The words hit me harder than if he'd slapped me. Several people looked away, suddenly fascinated by their drinks. Clara's face went white, but she didn't move, didn't speak. Just stood there with her hand pressed against her mouth. Sophia ran inside, sobbing. I followed her, found her locked in the bathroom. Through the door, I could hear her crying like her heart was broken. Honey, it's Grandma. Let me in. I can't do anything right, she choked out. Dad says I'm stupid. He says I'm just like you, and that's why I'll never amount to anything. I pressed my forehead against the door, closing my eyes. The words weren't new. Victor had been making comments about me for years, about my old-fashioned ways, my failing memory, my irrelevance in the modern world. But hearing that he'd poisoned my granddaughter's mind with the same cruelty made something cold and hard form in my chest. When Sophia finally opened the door, her eyes were red and swollen. I pulled her into my arms and held her while she cried. Your father is wrong, I whispered into her hair. About you and about me. And someday, he's going to realize just how wrong he was. But Victor's mask didn't just slip that day, it kept falling bit by bit, until I could see exactly what kind of man my daughter had married. There was the Thanksgiving when he made Clara serve everyone while he sat at the head of the table like a king, complaining that the turkey was dry, the stuffing was bland, everything was wrong. Clara moved through the meal like a robot, her smile plastic, her eyes dead. There was Christmas morning when Daniel opened a present from me, a guitar I'd saved for months to buy, and Victor said, that's a waste of money. The kid has no talent. Probably got your grandmother's tin ear. There were the phone calls I'd overhear when Clara didn't know I was on the extension. Victor's voice, sharp and mean, your mother's getting old. She's forgetting things. We need to start thinking about power of attorney before she gives all her money to some TV scam. Each incident alone could be explained away. A bad day. Too much stress. Everyone says things they don't mean sometimes. But together, they formed a pattern. A picture of a man who measured people by their usefulness and discarded them when they had nothing left to give. What really told me everything I needed to know was how Victor talked about money. His eyes would actually light up, like a cartoon character seeing gold. He'd bring it up constantly: investments, property values, inheritance laws, tax breaks for dependents. "You know, Margaret," he said once, driving me home from a doctor's appointment Clara couldn't make, "you should really consider adding Clara to your accounts. You know, just in case something happens. Makes things easier for everyone." "I'll think about it," I said, staring out the window. "I mean, at your age, you never know. Could have a stroke, lose your memory. Then what? The state takes everything. Better to plan ahead." At my age. Like I was already halfway in the grave. "Arthur and I planned ahead quite well, Victor. But thank you for your concern." His jaw tightened. He didn't like that answer. Didn't like that I wasn't grateful for his help. Didn't like that he couldn't quite get his hands on what he wanted. The questions kept coming. About Arthur's pension, how much, where it went, who controlled it. About the house, was it really paid off, what was it worth now, had I thought about reverse mortgages? About my bank accounts, my investments, my insurance policies. I gave vague answers, smiled politely, changed the subject, and watched Victor's frustration grow. Clara saw it all. She had to have seen it. But she'd stopped fighting back years ago. I'd watch her start to argue with him, then deflate mid-sentence like someone had let all the air out. She'd look at me with apology in her eyes, but she never defended me. Never stood up. Never said, "That's my mother you're talking about." I wanted to shake her sometimes. To remind her of the strong, fierce girl she used to be, the one who'd stood up to bullies in school, who'd fought for what she believed in. But Victor had spent 20 years grinding that strength down to nothing. And I played the role of the forgetful, harmless old lady. I let Victor think he was smarter than me, that he had it all figured out. I let him believe that my silence meant surrender. He thought I was blind to his scheming, deaf to his cruelty, too old and tired to do anything about it. He had no idea that Arthur and I had prepared for men like him long before Clara ever brought him home for Sunday dinner. "Maggie, come sit with me. We need to talk." Arthur's voice was different that day. Serious in a way that made my stomach clench. This was 6 months before the cancer diagnosis, before we knew our time was limited. We were just two people in our 60s, planning for a future we thought we had plenty of time for. We sat on the back porch, the sun setting over the oak tree we'd planted when Clara was born. Arthur held an envelope, thick with papers, his reading glasses perched on his nose. "I've been thinking," he started, then paused. Arthur never paused. He was the most direct person I'd ever known. "I've been thinking about Victor." "What about him?" "He's going to be a problem, Maggie. After I'm gone." I wanted to argue, to defend our son-in-law, but I couldn't. I'd seen the same things Arthur had. The calculating looks. The too careful questions. The way he treated Clara like property instead of a partner. "I've set things up," Arthur continued, opening the envelope. "Trusts, accounts, protections. The house isn't in your name, it's in a living trust with you as the sole trustee. Victor can't touch it. Clara can't be pressured to sell it. It's yours until you decide otherwise, and after that, it goes where we want it to go." He showed me papers I barely understood. Legal terms that swam before my eyes. But Arthur explained each one patiently, the way he always did. The pension doesn't just deposit into a checking account. It's split between multiple accounts, some in your name, some in trust structures. The savings we've built? Diversified. Protected. There's enough for you to live comfortably for 30 years if you need to. "Arthur, this seems excessive." "It's not." His voice was firm. "Maggie, I've watched Victor for 15 years now. I've seen how he operates. He thinks old people are marks, targets, easy pickings. He thinks when I'm gone, you'll be vulnerable, lost, easy to manipulate." Tears pricked my eyes. Not because I was scared, but because Arthur knew. He understood that his death would change everything, and he was trying to protect me from beyond the grave. "There's more," he said softly. "I've established a foundation. Small now, but it'll grow. When you're gone, and not a day before you're ready, It'll provide scholarships for kids whose parents can't afford college. Real help, Maggie. The kind we wished we'd had when we were young. My throat closed up. We'd both come from nothing. Worked our way through everything. Arthur had been the first in his family to finish high school. I'd worked 3 jobs to help pay for Clara's education. We understood what doors opened when someone gave you a chance. The foundation is set up so Victor can't touch it, can't redirect it, can't claim it for Clara and through her for himself. It's locked tight. Why are you doing all this now? I asked, though I think I already knew. Arthur took my hand, squeezed it 3 times. Because one day, people may test you. They'll push to see how far you'll bend. And I need you to know that you don't have to bend at all. You'll have options. Power. Control. Everything you need to stand firm. What if I mess it up? What if I don't understand all these legal things? You're smarter than you think you are, Arthur said, and his voice was so full of love it made my chest hurt. Victor has made you doubt yourself, made you feel less than. But you're not, Maggie. You're the strongest person I know. And when the time comes, you'll know exactly what to do. We sat there as the sun disappeared, the envelope between us, our hands clasped together. I didn't fully understand everything that day. But I trusted Arthur. I always had. 2 months later, the cancer diagnosis came. Aggressive. Fast-moving. The doctors gave him a year. He made it 10 months. But in those 10 months, Arthur made sure I understood everything. Every account. Every trust. Every protection he'd built around me. We'd sit at the kitchen table after his treatments, him weak and gray, walking me through papers until I could recite the details in my sleep. Victor's going to push hard after I'm gone, Arthur said during one of our last conversations. He was so thin by then, his wedding ring sliding around on his finger. He'll make you feel guilty. He'll use Clara against you. He'll probably try to convince you that you're losing your mind, that you need help managing things. I know. Don't give in, Maggie. Not 1 inch. The moment you add his name to anything, the moment you give him control, it's over. He'll take everything and call it love. I kissed his forehead. I won't. I promise. Good girl. He smiled weakly. And Maggie? When he finally shows his true colors, when he finally pushes too far, and he will, you let him fall. You don't catch him. You don't save him. You let consequences do their work. That seems cruel. It's justice, Arthur corrected. There's a difference. Cruelty is what Victor does. Justice is what happens when someone finally stops him. 3 weeks later, Arthur squeezed my hand 3 times and slipped away. And I spent the next 10 years waiting for Victor to reveal himself completely, knowing that when he did, I'd be ready. Victor thought my future was in his hands, but the truth was, his future rested in mine. And he was about to find that out. The Sunday dinners were my ritual, my anchor, my last thread connecting me to the life Arthur and I built. Every week, without fail, I'd cook a full meal even though I knew no one was coming. I'd wake up early, make the grocery list, drive to the market where Mrs. Chin always saved me the best cuts of meat. I'd spend the afternoon cooking, pot roast with carrots and potatoes, or chicken and dumplings, or Arthur's favorite meatloaf with the tangy glaze he loved. The table would be set with our wedding china, the good silver we'd received as gifts 50 years ago. Candles lit. Napkins folded. Wine poured into 2 glasses, even though one would sit untouched. Then I'd sit down at the table, say grace the way Arthur always had, and eat alone. People would probably think it was sad. Maybe it was. But it was mine. It kept me connected to something real, something that mattered. Every Sunday, for 3 hours, I could pretend the world was still the way it used to be. Clara used to come to these dinners. She'd bring the kids, and we'd laugh and talk and be a family. But over the years, the visits grew shorter. Less frequent. More strained. We can't make it this Sunday, Mom. Victor has a work thing. The kids have too much homework. Maybe next month. I'm sorry, I forgot to call. We already ate. Excuses piled on excuses until the invitations stopped coming altogether. I'd still cook, still set the table, but I stopped expecting anyone to show up. The house felt bigger with every passing year. Emptier. The rooms Arthur and I had filled with life and love now echoed with silence. His reading chair sat empty by the window. His tools still hung in the garage, waiting for projects that would never be finished. His cologne bottle still sat on the bathroom counter because I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. Some nights, I'd wake up and forget he was gone. I'd reach across the bed for him, my hand finding only cold sheets. The remembering hurt worse than the initial grief. Every single time. But I pushed through. I kept the curtains washed, the floors swept, the garden weeded. I volunteered at the library on Tuesdays. I attended church on Sundays before coming home to my lonely dinners. I maintained routines because routines kept you human, kept you from drowning in the silence. Victor called maybe once a month. Usually with questions. Hey Margaret, quick thing. Did Arthur have any life insurance policies we don't know about? Margaret, Clara mentioned you had some chest pains last week. Have you thought about updating your will? You know, just in case. Margaret, I was talking to a friend about estate planning. You really should have someone with financial power of attorney. For your protection. Every conversation was a fishing expedition. Every question designed to get information, to find weakness, to map out what he thought would eventually be his. I gave him nothing. Polite deflections. Vague answers. I'll think about it. Arthur handled all that. Everything's taken care of. Clara's calls were different, but somehow worse. She'd phone on my birthday, on Mother's Day, on Christmas. Her voice would be bright and artificial, like she was reading from a script. Hi Mom. How are you? We're so busy here, you know how it is. The kids are growing so fast. Victor's business is doing well. We should get together soon. But we never did. And I could hear the exhaustion underneath her cheerful words. The defeat. My daughter had turned into someone I barely recognized, a shadow, a puppet, a woman who'd lost herself somewhere in her marriage and couldn't find the way back. The grandchildren called only when they needed something. Money for a school trip. Cash for a concert. A loan for a car. They'd be sweet then, full of I love you grandma and you're the best. But once they got what they wanted, silence. I gave them money anyway. Not because I was fooled, but because I remembered being young and stupid. And because somewhere under the entitlement Victor had taught them, there were still traces of the children who used to help me plant tomatoes and learn to bake cookies. But watching them turn into miniature versions of their father broke something in me. Sophia had his calculating eyes now. Daniel had his dismissive tone. They looked at me like I was an ATM with a pulse, valuable only for what I could provide. I started keeping a journal. Nothing fancy, just a simple notebook where I'd write down the things Victor said, the promises Clara broke, the ways my family slowly stopped seeing me as a person. I didn't know why I was doing it at first. Some instinct, maybe. Some part of me that knew I'd need proof someday that I wasn't crazy, that the distance was real. The entries got darker as the years passed. Victor asked about the house deed again today. Third time this month. Clara cancelled Sunday dinner. Didn't call until I'd already finished cooking. Sophia asked for $500 for textbooks. I saw her Instagram story. She spent it on designer shoes. Victor made a joke at Clara's birthday party about waiting for inheritance. Everyone laughed. Clara looked like she wanted to die. But what Victor didn't know, what none of them knew, was that my silence was not weakness. It was strategy. Every insult I swallowed, I remembered. Every manipulation I let slide, I documented. Every time they mistook my patience for stupidity, I added it to the mental ledger I was keeping. Because Arthur had taught me something valuable in those last months, you can't stop people from showing you who they really are. All you can do is believe them the first time and prepare accordingly. And I had been preparing. Oh, how I had been preparing. The trust documents were updated and secured. The foundation Arthur had established was growing slowly but surely, invested wisely, waiting for its purpose. The house deed was untouchable, locked in legal structures that would take a team of lawyers years to penetrate. My accounts were scattered and protected. My will was ironclad. I'd even met with Arthur's lawyer, old Mr. Patterson, who'd known us for 40 years, and made sure everything was exactly as it should be. You're being very thorough, Margaret, he'd said, looking at me over his glasses. Some might say excessively cautious. Some might say I'm finally learning from my husband, I'd replied. He'd smiled then, understanding. Arthur was a smart man. He knew how to protect what mattered. So I waited. I cooked my Sunday dinners. I tended my garden. I kept my house clean and my affairs in order. And I watched Victor's impatience grow with every passing month. He was waiting for me to break, to need him, to become the burden he'd already decided I was. He was waiting for his opportunity to swoop in, take control, and claim his prize. But what Victor didn't know was that my silence was not weakness, it was strategy. And the trap he didn't know he was walking into had been set years ago by a man who'd loved me enough to protect me even after death. The question was never if Victor would show his true face. The question was when. And how spectacularly he'd destroy himself in the process. That answer came on a chilly November evening, at a dinner table he thought would be my last. He had no idea it would be his. Have you ever had to cut off family members who treated you like a burden instead of a blessing? Drop a comment and let me know your story. And hit that subscribe button because what happens next, when Victor finally learns the truth, is going to blow your mind. The morning sun hit my face at exactly 7:15, same as it had every morning for the past 40 years. I opened my eyes, took a breath, and felt nothing but calm. They expected tears. Panic. A frantic phone call begging them to reconsider. That's what Victor wanted, me broken, desperate, scrambling for his mercy. Instead, I made tea. Earl Grey, 2 sugars, splash of milk. I buttered my toast, spread it with the orange marmalade I made last spring. I sat at the kitchen table, the same one where Arthur proposed to me in 1970, and I smiled. Because this morning, everything changed. My phone sat silent on the counter. No apologetic call from Clara. No smug follow-up from Victor making sure I understood the arrangement. Just silence, which told me everything I needed to know. They thought the matter was settled. They thought I'd accepted my fate. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I'd had saved for 3 years, waiting for exactly this moment. Patterson and Associates, how may I help you? This is Margaret Holloway. I need to speak with Mr. Patterson immediately. Tell him it's time. Those 2 words, it's time, were the signal Arthur and I had arranged. Mr. Patterson had been waiting for them, just like I'd been waiting to say them. Mrs. Holloway, his voice came through warm and certain. I've been expecting your call. Shall I proceed with everything we discussed? Every single thing. Consider it done. And Margaret? Your husband was a brilliant man. What he set up for you is, well, you'll see. They won't know what hit them. I hung up and sipped my tea. Across town, Victor was probably sleeping in, dreaming about my house, my money, my life that he thought he'd just claimed. He had no idea that at this very moment, legal machinery was grinding into motion that would crush every plan he'd made. Meanwhile, Clara was likely awake, guilt eating at her, wondering if she should call. But she wouldn't. She never did when it mattered. I spent the morning gardening. The fall flowers needed deadheading, and the rose bushes Arthur planted needed pruning before winter. My hands worked automatically, cutting and shaping, while my mind stayed perfectly clear. This wasn't revenge. Revenge was emotional, messy, satisfying in the moment, but hollow afterward. This was justice. This was consequence. This was what happened when someone pushed the wrong person too far. At 11:30, my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Mrs. Holloway? This is David Chen from First National Bank. We have Victor Brennan here attempting to access your accounts. He's claiming power of attorney and asking for full account information. We wanted to verify. Mr. Chen, I have given no one power of attorney over my accounts. Victor Brennan has no authority whatsoever. If he persists, please notify me and I'll contact the police for attempted fraud. Silence on the other end. Then, barely audible, I heard Victor's voice in the background. What do you mean she has to authorize it? She's senile. She doesn't know what she's doing. Mr. Brennan, the banker's voice was cold now. Mrs. Holloway is completely lucid and has full control of her affairs. I'm going to have to ask you to leave, or I'll call security. I smiled into my teacup. That was move number 1. Victor had jumped the gun, assuming that after last night's dinner, I'd be too devastated to function. He'd gone straight to the bank this morning, probably with forged documents or sob stories about his declining mother-in-law. But the bank knew me. I'd been a customer for 48 years. They knew I was sharp as ever. And Arthur had left very specific instructions with them about anyone, especially Victor, attempting to access my accounts. Strike one, Victor. My phone rang again at 1 o'clock. Clara this time. I considered not answering, but curiosity won. Mom. Her voice was small, shaking. Mom, what's going on? Victor just came home furious. He says you're causing problems with the bank. He says you're being difficult about the nursing home arrangement. I haven't agreed to any nursing home, Clara. But last night, Victor said. Victor said a lot of things last night. None of them were true. And none of them were his decision to make. Mom, please. She was crying now. He's so angry. He says you're doing this on purpose. He says you're trying to make things hard for us. Clara, I need you to hear me very clearly. Your husband announced at dinner that he was putting me in a nursing home so he could take my house. He didn't ask. He didn't discuss. He commanded. And you sat there and said nothing. I didn't know what to say. You say no. You say that's my mother. You say we're not doing this. But you've forgotten how to say those things, haven't you? She was sobbing now, but I couldn't soften. Not yet. She needed to feel this. Mom, please just work with us. Victor has a plan. The nursing home is nice. You'd be taken care of. And we could use the house money to. To what, Clara? To pay off Victor's debts? To fund whatever scheme he's running now? To buy things you don't need with money you didn't earn? That's not fair. What's not fair is a daughter who lets her husband discard her mother like trash. What's not fair is 20 years of watching you disappear into that man's shadow. What's not fair is my grandchildren being taught that I'm worthless. The line went quiet except for her crying. I love you, Clara. I always will. But I will not let Victor destroy me the way he's destroyed you. And if you can't stand up to him, then you'll have to watch what happens when someone finally does. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking now, adrenaline finally catching up. But I wasn't done. At 3 o'clock, my phone rang again. Victor this time, and I almost laughed at his audacity. Margaret. His voice was ice. We need to talk about your behavior today. My behavior? You embarrassed me at the bank. You upset Clara. You're being stubborn and foolish, and it needs to stop. I'm being foolish by not letting you steal my home? Steal? I'm trying to help you. You're old, you're alone, you clearly can't handle your own affairs anymore. Victor, I want you to listen very carefully. I am 72 years old. I am in perfect health. I am completely competent. And I have more control over my affairs than you could possibly imagine. That's what you think. But Clara is my wife, and as your only family. You have no legal right to anything I own. None. The house isn't in my name. It's in a trust you can't touch. My accounts are protected. My pension goes where I direct it. You have exactly zero power over any of it. The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. Then his voice came back, low and dangerous. You're going to regret this. No, Victor. I don't think I will. I ended the call and blocked his number. Then Clara's. Then the house line they called from. Clean breaks, Arthur used to say. When you cut someone out, you cut them all the way. That night, Victor's phone rang with news that shattered his arrogance. The certified letter arrived at their house at 6 p.m. I knew because Mr. Patterson called to confirm delivery. The letter detailed exactly what Victor didn't have access to: the house, the accounts, the pension, the investments. It explained the trust structure, the legal protections, the impossibility of him ever claiming what he thought was his inheritance. But more than that, it included something special. Something Arthur had arranged with vicious precision. A detailed accounting of every time Victor had asked about my finances. Every inappropriate question. Every manipulation attempt. Dates, times, witnesses when available. All documented, all legal, all proof that his interest in my care was actually about my assets. The letter concluded with a warning: Any further attempts to coerce, manipulate, or defraud Margaret Holloway would result in legal action, including possible charges of elder abuse and fraud. Mr. Patterson called me at 6:30. Margaret, I just got off the phone with a very angry Victor Brennan. I imagine you did. He threatened to sue. Said the documents are fraudulent. Said you're not competent to make these decisions. And what did you tell him? I told him that I've been your lawyer for 40 years, that you're one of the sharpest clients I've ever had, and that if he pursues this, I'll bury him in so much paperwork he'll wish he'd never heard your name. I laughed then, really laughed, for the first time since Arthur died. He also said something interesting, Mr. Patterson continued. He said, she'll come crawling back. Old people always do. They can't survive without family. Well, I said, looking around my beautiful home, my sanctuary, my fortress, I guess he's about to learn how wrong he is. That night, I slept better than I had in years. But that was only the beginning of their downfall. The next morning started with a phone call I wasn't expecting. Not from Victor or Clara, but from my bank manager himself. Mrs. Holloway, this is Robert Martinez. I wanted to personally apologize for yesterday's incident with Mr. Brennan. I've flagged your accounts with additional security. No one can access anything without your physical presence and signature now. Thank you, Robert. I appreciate that. Mrs. Holloway, if I may speak candidly, we see this kind of thing more often than we should. Family members trying to access accounts of elderly relatives. Usually they're successful because the person is actually impaired or they've been pressured into giving access. But you, he paused. You're different. You saw this coming, didn't you? My husband saw it coming. I just followed his instructions. Smart man. The protections he set up are some of the most comprehensive I've ever seen. Mr. Brennan seemed genuinely shocked that he couldn't touch anything. After we hung up, I made myself breakfast and waited. Because I knew Victor. He wouldn't give up this easily. Men like him never did. Sure enough, at 10 a.m., someone knocked on my door. Hard, angry knocks that made the wood rattle. I looked through the peephole. Victor, red-faced and furious, Clara standing behind him looking terrified. I didn't open the door. Margaret, open this door right now. We need to talk. Victor's voice was barely controlled rage. I spoke through the door, calm as Sunday morning. There's nothing to discuss, Victor. The hell there isn't. You can't just cut us out like this. Clara is your daughter. Those are your grandchildren. You owe us. I owe you nothing. You selfish old woman. After everything we've done for you. We invited you to dinner, we checked on you. You invited me to dinner so you could announce you were discarding me. You checked on me to see if I was incompetent enough to manipulate yet. I've been keeping track, Victor. Every visit, every phone call, every question about my finances. I know exactly what you've been doing. Clara's voice, weak and pleading, Mom, please. Can we just talk? Just the two of us. Clara, when you're ready to leave him and remember who you used to be, my door will open. Until then, no. You can't do this. Victor was shouting now, pounding on the door. That house should be ours. Your money should help your family. My family is dead, Victor. He's been dead 10 years. What you are is the parasite who married my daughter. The pounding stopped. For a moment, silence. Then Victor's voice, low and cruel. You'll die alone in there. Miserable and forgotten. And when you do, we'll get everything anyway. No, I said clearly. You won't. But you'll find that out soon enough. I heard Clara crying, heard Victor dragging her away, still cursing. I watched through the window as they got in their car and drove off, Victor's hands gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles were white. Then I picked up my phone and called Mr. Patterson again. They came to my house. He made threats. I want a restraining order filed today. Consider it done. Margaret, I'm also going to recommend you install security cameras. Just in case. Already ordered them. They'll be installed tomorrow. The lawyer chuckled. You really did think of everything. Arthur did. I'm just following the plan. But the real blow came that afternoon, and I had nothing to do with it. That was the beautiful thing about consequences, sometimes they happened all on their own. Mr. Patterson called at 3 o'clock, and I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. Margaret, you're going to want to sit down for this. I'm already sitting. I just got a call from a colleague who works in commercial real estate. Apparently, Victor's been using your house as collateral. My blood went cold. What? He's been telling investors and lenders that he's the heir to a property worth approximately $800,000. He's been securing business loans against it, promising the house as backup collateral. Except, of course, he has no legal claim to the house whatsoever. How is that even possible? Fraud, Margaret. Simple, stupid fraud. He's been presenting himself as your power of attorney, your caretaker, your inevitable heir. And because he's been so confident about it, people believed him. How much has he borrowed? From what my colleague gathered, somewhere around $300,000 across multiple loans. I couldn't breathe. $300,000 borrowed against a house he didn't own and never would. Margaret, when these lenders find out the truth, and they will very soon, they're going to demand immediate repayment. And if Victor can't pay, he'll lose everything. Everything. I should have felt sorry for Clara, for the kids. But all I felt was cold justice spreading through my chest like winter frost. There's more, Mr. Patterson continued. His business partners are asking questions now. Apparently he's been bragging about this guaranteed inheritance for months, using it to seem more financially stable than he is. When they find out he lied, his reputation will be destroyed. Completely. That evening, I got a frantic call from Sophia. I'd unblocked the kids' numbers. They were children after all, trapped in their father's mess. Grandma? Grandma, something's wrong. Dad's screaming at Mom. He's throwing things. He keeps saying someone ruined him, someone destroyed everything. Grandma, I'm scared. My heart clenched. Are you safe right now? Is he hurting anyone? No, he's locked in his office. But Grandma, what's happening? Mom won't stop crying. Dad keeps yelling about money and houses and lawyers. Did you do something? Your father did something, sweetheart. He lied to people about money he didn't have and a house he couldn't access. Now those people want their money back, and he doesn't have it. But that was your house. He said it would be his when you died. He said a lot of things that weren't true, Sophia. And now he's facing the consequences. She was quiet for a long moment. Grandma, are we going to be okay? You and Daniel? Yes. Your mother? Eventually. Your father? That depends on what he does next. He says it's your fault. He says you destroyed him on purpose. I didn't destroy him, honey. I just stopped him from destroying me. There's a difference. After Sophia hung up, I sat in Arthur's chair and looked out at the darkening sky. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel happy. I just felt tired and sad and relieved all at once. Victor had built his entire future on a foundation of lies and assumptions. He'd been so confident that I was weak, helpless, easily controlled. He'd been so certain that the house would be his, that he'd literally bet his financial future on it. And now that foundation had crumbled, and he was falling through the cracks of his own making. But by the time Victor realized how deep my plans ran, it was already too late. His world was about to collapse entirely, and I hadn't even played my final card yet. Would you protect yourself the way Margaret did, or would you let family guilt force you into giving up everything you worked for? Let me know in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed because the next chapter shows exactly how far Victor falls, and it's more devastating than you can imagine. The phone calls started at 6 a.m. Not to me, I'd blocked everyone. But I heard about them later from Mr. Patterson, from the bank, from neighbors who suddenly found themselves very interested in the drama unfolding in the Brennan household. Victor's business partners had found out about the fraudulent collateral. All of them. At once. Someone, probably one of the lenders he deceived, had sent out emails documenting everything. The fake claims about the house. The lies about his financial backing. The $300,000 in loans he couldn't repay. By noon, Victor's business was finished. Partners pulled out. Investors demanded their money back. The small consulting firm he'd built his identity around dissolved like sugar in hot water. But that wasn't the worst part. Clara called me from a number I didn't recognize. Her voice was hollow, empty of everything except exhaustion. Mom? They're taking the house. Our house. Victor borrowed against it too. Used fake documents saying it was paid off. But we still owe $200,000 on the mortgage, and now the bank is calling the loan. We have 30 days to pay everything or we're foreclosed. I closed my eyes. Clara and the kids didn't deserve this. But this was the cost of standing by while Victor operated like he owned the world. Where will you go? I asked quietly. I don't know. Victor keeps saying you'll help us. That you'll give us money to fix this. That you owe us because we're family. Clara, look at me through this phone. Really look at me. Do you think I owe Victor anything? Silence. Long, painful silence. No, she finally whispered. No, you don't. I will help you. You and Sophia and Daniel. But not him. Never him. He's my husband. He's a criminal, Clara. He's committed fraud. Multiple times. He's destroyed his own family chasing money he had no right to. And if you stay with him, you'll drown too. She was crying again, but different this time. Not manipulative tears or guilty tears. These were real, raw, the sound of something breaking. I don't know who I am anymore, she sobbed. I used to be strong. I used to stand up for things. When did I become this person who just watches? Who just lets things happen? You became that person slowly, I said gently. Over 20 years of him telling you you're wrong, you're stupid, you're nothing without him. That's what men like Victor do, Clara. They don't break you all at once. They do it bit by bit until you can't remember what you looked like whole. I'm so sorry, Mom. For dinner. For everything. For not defending you. For letting him. I know you are. And I forgive you. But Clara, you need to make a choice now. Him or yourself. Because you can't have both anymore. The next few days were chaos I watched from a distance. Victor tried to contact me 17 times through various numbers and emails. I ignored every attempt. His parents called, people I hadn't spoken to in 15 years. They begged me to help their son, to not let him be destroyed by a misunderstanding. Mrs. Brennan, I said calmly, your son committed fraud. He lied to banks and investors. He tried to steal my home. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is consequences. But the children, think of the children. I am thinking of the children. They're learning a valuable lesson about what happens when you treat people like objects. Maybe if you'd taught Victor that lesson 30 years ago, we wouldn't be here now. I hung up on her outraged sputtering. Meanwhile, Sophia called me almost every day. Not for money, she never asked for money. Just to talk. To cry. To tell me what was happening in a house falling apart. Dad doesn't leave his office anymore. He just sits there drinking and yelling at people on the phone. Mom is looking at apartments. Small ones. She says we can't afford anything else now. How are you handling this, sweetheart? I'm angry, Grandma. I'm so angry. He ruined everything. He was so sure he was smarter than everyone. So sure he'd get your house and everything would be fine. And now we're losing our house because of his lies. I'm sorry you're going through this. Are you though? Her voice wasn't accusing, just curious. Are you sorry, or is this what you wanted? I thought about it carefully. I wanted justice, Sophia. I wanted your father to face consequences for treating people, including me, like stepping stones to what he wanted. Did I want you and Daniel and your mother to suffer? No. But sometimes the people we love get caught in the blast radius of someone else's choices. He keeps saying you did this on purpose. That you planned it all. I planned to protect myself. Your grandfather planned to make sure I'd be safe after he was gone. What your father did, borrowing money he couldn't repay, committing fraud, building his life on lies, that was his choice. I just didn't let him take me down with him. Daniel called once, just once. His voice was harder than Sophia's, more like Victor's used to be. This is your fault, he said. Dad was trying to take care of you, and you ruined him. Daniel, your father announced he was putting me in a nursing home so he could take my house. That's not taking care of someone. That's disposing of them. You're old. You don't need a whole house. We needed. You needed to learn that other people's belongings aren't yours just because you want them. You needed to learn that respect matters more than inheritance. You needed a father who taught you those things, but instead you got Victor. He hung up on me. I didn't blame him. He was 14, his world was collapsing, and he needed someone to be angry at. Better me than himself. But the real breaking point came 2 weeks after the initial collapse. Clara called me from yet another unknown number. Mom, I left him. Those 4 words hung in the air like a prayer. I packed up the kids, took everything we could fit in the car, and I left. We're staying with my friend Jennifer until I can find an apartment. Victor doesn't know where we are. How did he react? He didn't notice for 6 hours. That's how lost in his own disaster he was. When he finally realized we were gone, her voice broke. He didn't even ask if we were okay. He asked if I took anything valuable he could sell. My heart broke for her, but also sang with relief. She was out. She was free. Clara, I have money set aside for you. For an apartment, for the kids' expenses, for whatever you need to start over. Mom, I can't. Yes, you can. This isn't for him. This is for you. For the daughter who lost herself and is trying to find her way back. She sobbed openly now. I don't deserve your help. Maybe not. But you're getting it anyway. Because that's what mothers do, Clara. We love our children even when they mess up. Even when they hurt us. Even when they take 20 years to remember who they are. What about Victor? What about him? Aren't you worried about what he'll do? He's desperate, Mom. Really desperate. He's talking about lawsuits, about finding loopholes, about... Let him talk. There are no loopholes. No lawsuits he can win. He's just screaming into the void, hoping someone will care. But I was wrong about one thing. Victor wasn't just screaming into the void. He was planning something much worse. And 3 days later, he showed up at my door, not with anger this time, but with something that looked almost like desperation. Almost like defeat. But I'd known Victor too long to trust that broken look in his eyes. The knock on my door came at 7 in the morning. Soft this time. Tentative. Nothing like the angry pounding from weeks before. I almost didn't answer. But something made me look through the peephole. Victor stood on my porch, and he looked nothing like the man who'd sat at the head of the dinner table declaring my fate. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair uncombed, his eyes red and hollow. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 3 weeks. He looked broken. I opened the door but kept the chain lock engaged. What do you want, Victor? Margaret, please. I need to talk to you. Please. His voice cracked on the word please. I'd never heard Victor say please in his life, not sincerely. It was always a command dressed up as courtesy. But this sounded real. Against my better judgment, I unlatched the chain and let him in. But I kept my phone in my hand, Mr. Patterson's number ready to dial. Victor walked into my living room like a ghost visiting his former life. He looked at Arthur's chair, at the photos on the mantel, at the home he'd tried to steal. I'm destroyed, he said finally, sitting heavily on the couch. Completely destroyed. My business is gone. My reputation is ruined. Clara left me. The house is in foreclosure. I have nothing, Margaret. Nothing. I sat across from him and said nothing. I know what you're thinking, he continued, his voice hollow. That I deserve this. That this is justice. That you're glad. I'm not glad, Victor. I'm just not surprised. He looked up at me then, and I saw something I'd never seen in his eyes before. Fear. Real, genuine fear. They're going to press charges. The fraud charges. The fake collateral. I could go to prison, Margaret. Real prison. For years. Then you should have thought about that before you committed fraud. I was trying to secure our future. Our family's future. Everything I did was for us. No, Victor. Everything you did was for you. You didn't care about Clara or the kids or me. You cared about money and control and feeling powerful. And when you couldn't get power honestly, you lied and cheated and stole. He put his head in his hands. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I need your help, he said finally. No. Margaret, please. If you just sign a statement saying you gave me permission to use the house as collateral. Absolutely not. It would solve everything. The fraud charges would disappear. I could negotiate with the lenders. I could. You could continue lying and dragging me into your mess. No, Victor. The answer is no. He stood up then, and I saw the desperation turn to something uglier. Something more familiar. You owe me this. I was married to your daughter for 20 years. I gave you grandchildren. You can't just abandon family. You abandoned family the moment you decided I was worth more discarded than respected. That dinner, I was just trying to plan for the future. You're old, Margaret. You can't take care of yourself forever. I was being practical. You were being cruel. And controlling. And greedy. You didn't care about my well-being. You cared about my assets. He paced the room now, his hands clenching and unclenching. Fine. Fine. I'll admit it. I wanted the house. I wanted the money. But so what? It's not like you need it. You're going to die someday anyway. Why shouldn't it go to your family? Because family is earned, Victor. Not taken. Family is built on love and respect and kindness. You showed me none of those things. You treated me like an obstacle to clear away. So this is revenge? You're destroying my life for revenge. No. You destroyed your life by committing fraud. I just didn't let you destroy mine along with it. He stared at me, breathing hard, and I could see him trying to find an angle, a leverage point, something to make me bend. But there was nothing. No weakness he could exploit. No guilt he could trigger. No fear he could create. I'd become exactly what Arthur had prepared me to be, unshakable. You're a bitter old woman, Victor spat finally. Alone in this house, clinging to a dead man's memory, with no one who loves you. I'd rather be alone with dignity than surrounded by people who see me as a bank account with a pulse. Clara will never forgive you for this. Clara already has. She's building a new life without you. One where she remembers who she was before you spent 20 years erasing her. That hit him harder than anything else. His face crumpled, and for a second I thought he might actually cry. But Victor didn't cry. Men like Victor didn't break down. They just got meaner. You'll regret this, he said, heading for the door. When you're dying alone in this house, you'll wish you'd helped me. You'll wish you'd been a better person. I don't think I will, Victor. I think I'll die knowing I stood up for myself when it mattered. Can you say the same? He slammed the door on his way out. Through the window, I watched him get in his car, not the expensive SUV he used to drive, but an old sedan with a dented fender. I watched him sit there for 5 minutes, hands on the steering wheel, head down. Then he drove away, and I never saw him again. But the story wasn't over. Not yet. 2 days later, Mr. Patterson called with news that made everything real. Victor's been arrested. The fraud charges. They're prosecuting. He'll likely take a plea deal, but Margaret, he's going away. Probably for 3 to 5 years. I sat down heavily. I'd known this was coming, but hearing it out loud was different. What about Clara and the kids? Clara's filed for divorce. She's asking for nothing from him, there's nothing to take anyway. She just wants custody of the children and permission to move on with her life. And Victor? He's trying to drag it out. Claiming Clara knew about the fraud, that she should share the consequences. But his lawyer knows that's nonsense. She's a victim in this too. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet house and felt the weight of everything settle around me. Justice had been served. Victor would face consequences. Clara was free. The kids were safe. But none of it felt like victory. It just felt like sadness and waste and the inevitable end of something that should have been better. That night, Sophia called. Grandma? I heard about Dad. About the arrest. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Don't be. He did this to himself. I wanted you to know that I get it now. What he was. What he did to you. To all of us. And I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. You were a child, Sophia. You're not responsible for understanding things adults should have protected you from. Mom says we're going to be okay. That you're helping us. Is that true? Yes. Why? After everything. Because you're my family. Real family. The kind that's built on love, not obligation or greed. And real family shows up when it matters. She was quiet for a moment. I want to be like you when I grow up, Grandma. Strong like that. Not like Dad. Those words healed something in me I didn't know was broken. Then you will be, I told her. You absolutely will be. When Victor came to my door that morning, I thought maybe he'd finally learned humility. But men like Victor don't learn. They just adapt their cruelty to new circumstances. He wasn't sorry for what he'd done. He was sorry he'd been caught. And that made all the difference. 6 months later, spring came to my garden like a resurrection. The roses Arthur planted bloomed full and fragrant. The geraniums I'd nursed through winter exploded with color. Even the old oak tree seemed to stand straighter, its branches full of new green leaves. I was kneeling in the dirt, planting marigolds, when I heard the car pull up. I turned to see Clara's new Honda, modest, practical, hers, parking in my driveway. She got out slowly, like she wasn't quite sure of her welcome. Behind her, Sophia and Daniel emerged, both taller than I remembered, both carrying grocery bags. Mom. Clara's voice was tentative. We brought Sunday dinner. If you'll have us. I stood up, brushed the dirt from my knees, and smiled. Really smiled, for the first time in what felt like years. The table's always been set for you, Clara. You just had to remember how to find your way home. She crossed the yard and hugged me then properly, the way she used to before Victor taught her that affection was weakness. She smelled like my daughter again, not like fear or apology, but like herself. Inside, we cooked together. Sophia chopped vegetables while telling me about her college applications. Daniel, quieter but present, set the table without being asked. Clara moved through my kitchen with growing confidence, humming a song I recognized from her childhood. We didn't talk about Victor. He existed somewhere in a minimum security prison, serving his time, but he wasn't welcome at this table. Not in words, not in memory, not in the space we were rebuilding. Grandma, Sophia said as we sat down to eat, Mom told us about the foundation. The one Grandpa Arthur set up. I looked at Clara, who nodded. I thought they should know. About what you and Dad really built. About what Victor almost destroyed. It's for scholarships, I explained, passing the potatoes. For kids whose families can't afford college. Arthur and I both came from nothing. We knew what one chance could mean. So we built something that would give chances to others, long after we were gone. How much is in it? Daniel asked, then blushed. Sorry. That's rude. I didn't know Grandpa did things like that. Your grandfather did a lot of things people didn't know about. He believed in quiet goodness. In helping without needing credit. The foundation has about $2 million now. When I'm gone, it'll have more. Sophia's eyes went wide. 2 million? But I thought, Victor always said you were just comfortable. That the house was your only real asset. Victor thought a lot of things that weren't true. Your grandfather made sure I'd be secure, and that his money would eventually do good in the world. Not line someone's pockets. Not feed someone's greed. Good. Clara reached across the table and took my hand. I'm so sorry, Mom. For believing Victor's version of things. For not seeing what he was doing. For not protecting you. You were protecting yourself, Clara. Survival looks different when you're living with someone like Victor. I understand that now, even if it hurt at the time. How did you know? Daniel asked suddenly. How did you know he'd do what he did? How were you prepared? I thought about Arthur, about those last conversations on the back porch, about the envelope full of protection he'd built for me. Your grandfather knew how to read people. He saw something in Victor during your parents' engagement that worried him. Not enough to stop the wedding. Clara loved him then, and we wanted her to be happy. But enough to prepare. To build walls around the things that mattered. To make sure that if Victor ever showed his true face, he couldn't destroy everything we'd built. That's kind of brilliant, Sophia said quietly. Sad but brilliant. It's realistic, I corrected. Your grandfather used to say that hoping for the best while preparing for the worst isn't pessimism. It's wisdom. We ate our Sunday dinner together, the four of us, and the house felt alive again. Felt full. Felt like home instead of a museum of memories. After dinner, Clara and I did dishes while the kids explored the garden. Through the window, I watched them examining the roses, taking pictures of the blooming flowers, laughing at something only they could hear. They're good kids, I said. Despite everything. They're finding themselves again, Clara replied, scrubbing a pot with more force than necessary. We all are. It's strange, Mom. Victor's gone, and I keep waiting to feel lost without him. But instead I just feel lighter. Like I've been carrying something heavy for so long I forgot what it felt like to stand up straight. That's exactly what it was. He was weight, Clara. Dead weight you thought you needed to carry. I got a promotion at work, she said suddenly. Assistant manager. It's not much, but it's mine. I earned it. Victor isn't there to take credit or tell me I'm not good enough. I'm proud of you. I'm learning to be proud of myself. She paused, hands stilling in the soapy water. Mom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Always. Do you think I'm like him? Like Victor? Do you think I learned his ways? Am I greedy or manipulative or… Clara, stop. I turned her to face me, my soapy hands on her shoulders. You are nothing like Victor. You made mistakes. You stayed too long. You let fear control you. But you're not him. You're capable of growth, of change, of recognizing when you're wrong. Victor never had those abilities. That's the difference. She hugged me then, crying softly, and I held my daughter the way I'd done when she was small and the world seemed too big and scary. I love you, Mom. I'm so sorry I forgot that for a while. I love you too, baby. And you never forgot. You just lost sight of it under all the other noise. That evening, as the sun set and painted my kitchen gold, we sat around the table drinking tea. Sophia pulled out her phone and started showing me her photography, beautiful shots of nature, of people, of moments captured perfectly. Daniel, shyer but warming up, played a song on his phone that he'd composed himself. It was rough, unpolished, but hauntingly beautiful. You're talented, I told him, and watched his face light up in a way it never had around his father. Dad used to say music was a waste of time. Your father said a lot of things that were wrong. Music is never a waste. Beauty is never a waste. Creating something from nothing is the opposite of waste. Before they left, Clara pulled me aside. Mom, there's something else. The foundation. I want to help run it. When you're ready. When you need help. I want to do something good with my life. Something that matters. Something that would make Arthur, proud. He'd love that, I said, my throat tight. And so would I. I'll do it right this time. I promise. I know you will. After they left, I stood on my porch and watched their taillights disappear down the street. The house behind me was clean and warm and mine. The garden was blooming. The foundation was growing. My daughter was healing. My grandchildren were finding themselves. And Arthur's voice whispered in my mind, warm and certain, well done, Maggie. Well done. I thought about Victor then, for the first time in weeks. Sitting in a cell somewhere, facing the consequences of his choices. Part of me, a small part, felt sorry for him. Not for what he was going through, but for what he'd lost. For what he'd thrown away chasing money he didn't need and power he didn't deserve. He could have had a real family. Love. Connection. Sunday dinners filled with laughter. But he chose greed instead, and greed was a cold companion in a 6x8 cell. The next morning, Mr. Patterson called with the final piece of news. Margaret, the last of the legal matters are settled. Victor's pleaded guilty. 3 years, eligible for parole in 2. Clara's divorce is final. Your accounts are permanently secured with additional protections. And the foundation, well, it's growing faster than we projected. Several donors read about it and wanted to contribute. That's wonderful. There's one more thing. Victor wants to write to you. Through his lawyer. He's asking if you'll accept letters. I thought about it for a long moment. About forgiveness and justice and the difference between the two. No, I said finally. Tell him I forgive him for my own peace, not for his comfort. Tell him I hope he finds real change in himself someday. But tell him I don't need his apologies or his justifications or his attempts to rewrite history. Tell him I'm done. That's very generous, considering. It's not generous, Mr. Patterson. It's just final. After we hung up, I walked through my house, my beautiful, safe, protected house, and thought about everything Arthur and I had built together. Not just the physical things, but the values, the strength, the wisdom to see people clearly and prepare for their worst while hoping for their best. I thought about quiet justice and loud consequences, about the difference between revenge and protection, about standing firm when the world wanted you to bend. Most of all, I thought about the life I still had ahead of me. Years, hopefully, of Sunday dinners with Clara and the kids. Of watching Sophia graduate college and Daniel pursue his music. Of seeing the foundation grow and change lives. Of tending my garden and sleeping peacefully in my own bed. Victor had tried to take all of that away. He tried to reduce me to a nursing home room and a bank account to raid. He'd thought I was weak, foolish, easy to discard. He'd been wrong about everything. That night, I made my tea, sat in Arthur's chair, and looked out at the stars. Somewhere up there, I liked to think Arthur was watching. Proud of how I'd stood strong. Satisfied that his careful planning had protected me exactly as he'd intended. I miss you, I whispered to the darkness. Every single day, I miss you. But you were right, my love. I was ready. I was strong enough. And I didn't let him break me. The house was quiet around me, but it wasn't empty. It was full of memories and love and the knowledge that I'd fought for what mattered and won. Not through cruelty or revenge, but through preparation and strength and the refusal to be anything less than I was, Margaret Holloway, survivor, protector of Arthur's legacy, and a woman who understood that the quietest victories are often the most powerful. Victor thought he could control my future. But in the end, he couldn't even control his own. And I was finally, completely, peacefully free. True power isn't in control or wealth or forcing others to bend to your will. True power is in dignity, preparation, and knowing your worth when everyone else tries to convince you you're worthless. Margaret stood firm when it mattered most, and she protected not just herself, but the legacy of love and goodness her husband had built. If this story touched your heart, if Margaret's quiet strength inspired you, hit that like button and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another story of courage, justice, and standing up for what's right. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever had to stand up to family who treated you like an obligation instead of a blessing? Your story might inspire someone else who's struggling right now. Remember, family is earned through love and respect, not taken through manipulation and greed. Stand firm. Stand strong. And never let anyone make you feel small just because they want what you have. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. And remember, quiet justice is powerful, but it's even more powerful when we stand together.